So when you're out in the sun doing this snorkeling or scuba diving, it's important to have some sunscreen protection, but you want to use a specific kind. You want to use a kind that is safe for the reefs and doesn't damage the coral or any of the other marine life. I would recommend a titanium oxide brand, reef safe, stuff like this. That's the stuff I'm using. Anything like that, you want to make sure that it's reef safe and not just reef friendly, because you really don't want to be harming any of the creatures in there. Let's put some of that on and be good to go. So we're here at about an hour and a half before the high tide mark, and the reason we're doing that is so that we can be here for what's called slack tide, where the current that's caused by the tides here is not as intense as any other time. So it's easier to swim, it's easier to move around, and also the water clarity will be at its highest at this point. So it should be good. We were out on the ocean side earlier, and the water out there looked really clear, and that's the water that sort of gets flushed in here at high tide. So it should be pretty clear here too today. Sometimes it isn't, sometimes due to storms or rough weather out on the ocean, it can be pretty murky in here, but usually it isn't. When you want to go snorkeling or diving at places like Phil Foster, you need a little bit of equipment. Like obviously you need a bathing suit, which I've got on underneath. Sort of waterproof sort of sun or rash shirt can help too. I'm wearing a suit because I get cold easily, sort of a wetsuit. You don't really need one. It depends on how long you're going in. I get cold pretty easily, so I like to wear a wetsuit. I've got a camera to record any sea life that I see. It's got a macro lens on it, so I can get really tiny things. It's a Paralens Vikita camera. They don't make them anymore, but it's pretty good. A GoPro also works really well. You need a snorkel and mask. This is actually a special mask with prescription lenses because I can't see too well, and snorkel, obviously. And another thing that can be helpful is you actually need one here, a dive flag. It's a float. It sort of floats behind you and you carry it along. And it's got a little flag on it, and that means that flag means diver down. It means that there's a diver underneath the flag, so no boats will come near you, and you'll be safe. You're not going to run into anybody running over you, basically. And here, as well as other places, many other places in Florida, the diver down flag is actually required by law. And here we have a flashlight as well. That's another just little piece of equipment. A lot of fish like to hide in crags and under rocks, and sometimes it can be dark, especially under the bridge over there, so a flashlight is something that can be really useful. I think we're all ready here. Just need to flippers on and put this on, and I think we'll be ready to go. So on the float we have the rope attached here, and this is what you attach to yourself. It's all tangled up here. You need to fix that. Well, I mean, it's tangled up for storage, transport. Just need to put that on that. So you attach this end to yourself. You can attach it around your leg, but sometimes that can be a bit of an irritant. So what I like to do actually is sort of take my flipper, and you see this little tab at the end here. I like to just sort of clip onto here. And that's not going to come off there. It'll come off if your flipper comes off, but I mean, you'll notice if that happens. And this is more comfortable. This is easier to avoid tangles. And you know what? You can even attach it to these tabs here. That way, it doesn't even touch your foot at all. The other way to do it is around your foot, like tie it around a bit, sort of like that. Tie it, just attach it to itself. That'll work too in a pinch. if you're diving without flippers. But that gets tangled a little more easily, and it's a bit more of a pain in the ass. But you can do that too. Here I am going into the water here, and as you can see, it's really very clear. I think we definitely chose the right time to go in today. See here the flag being pulled along behind me, the diver down flag. And here is one of the first things we found, which is the Unicorn Leatherjacket, which is a species of filefish, which I in fact had never seen before. So this was a really good find, and you can see it's sort of facing down and not really moving, and that makes it so it can hide easier, because it's almost sort of, it's very thin and almost sort of two-dimensional if you see it from a certain angle, as you'll see here in a minute. There are quite a few species of urchin that can be found at Phil Foster. I believe this one is the West Indian sea egg, which you can tell by its sort of whitish coloration. And this here is a Florida fighting conch, and it's actually alive. You can just sort of make out the eyes there, just poking out at the end of the shell. And here you can see that I found a pair of flying gurnards, which are this really interesting species related to sea robins. And what's really interesting about them is that they have this display that they do where they spread out their pectoral fins. You can see here, and they show this brilliant electric blue coloration, and that's to frighten potential predators. And here I come across a remora, which is oddly on its own, sitting in the sand. And this here is a sea cucumber, the chocolate chip sea cucumber, which is called that because it looks like it's covered in little chocolate chips. We were told that a Caribbean reef octopus had been hanging out by this sunken boat here, one of several that has been deliberately sunk at Phil Foster to create artificial reefs. So you can see here me diving down around trying to see if I can find this octopus. I didn't have any luck, but I'm sure it's there. Just you need to look carefully at all the little sort of holes and little nooks and crannies that you find, and there's a good chance you can find a little octopus staring out at you. And here we start heading under the East Bridge, and you can see there are a ton of spot-tail pinfish around the pilings already. As we go deeper underneath, we'll start to see more fish around these pilings. It's also starting to get darker and a little murkier, but still pretty good visibility. Here we see some scuba divers passing by under the bridge. Here you can see me dive down to one of the other boats underneath the bridge. And you can see there are plenty of fish around it. 2 French angelfish, there are a bunch of sergeant majors, a porkfish, a blue striped grunt. There is also a spot fin butterfly fish here. And we're starting to see here a greater diversity of fish species around the pilings, like these stoplight parrotfish that are in their initial phase. I dive down again at the next boat and come across a gray angelfish, a pair of French grunts, and a barred hamlet. Here's the third and largest boat underneath the bridge. I was hoping to find a grouper here, but no such luck. Just a lot of tomtates and sergeant majors. We've now reached the rock wall at the far east side of the park, underneath the bridge, and we're taking a look for species such as soapfish here, which I have come across, the greater soapfish. If you look carefully, you can also see some introduced orange cup corals there, which do not require photosynthesis to live. And I believe they are introduced from the Indo-Pacific. Moving along the east edge of the park, still underneath a series of docks, we come across this sleeping terminal phase stoplight parrotfish. Starting to move back west now, we start to come across a few other species of fish, like a queen angelfish, and if you look very carefully, you'll see a butter hamlet. And in fact, a banded butterfly fish as well, which was on its own. Two unique things, because A, I had never seen one at Phil Foster before, and B, they're usually in pairs, like all butterfly fish. Here's probably the deepest I dive on this visit. You can see I get to around 6 meters, which still isn't much. And here I come across an Atlantic Longarm Octopus, but it soon spotted me and assumed a sort of defensive pose to make itself look bigger. You can see that here. It started moving along again, this time assuming a form that I believe was meant to mimic a ray of some sort. You can see that here. And when we go down to look at it a third time, it sort of tries to make itself look as small as possible and bury itself in the sand. It's foregoing trying to be aggressive and just trying to make itself look inconspicuous and inedible. Next up, we come across a group of rainbow parrotfish, and in with these rainbow parrotfish were actually two midnight parrotfishes, which again are a species that I have not seen before at Phil Foster, so that was a good find. Here you can see me checking out some of the artificial reefs as we move west along the Snorkel trail. Here's a group of French angelfish with a gray angelfish in tow. I actually do find a Graysby in this artificial reef complex, but it sort of gets photobombed by a tomtate here. This porcupine fish has lost his tail. Here's another Graysby. Groupers tend to be pretty skittish. Here's one of my favorite residents of Phil Foster, the scrawled cowfish. I always try and make sure I get a shot of one of these. Here's another sea cucumber. I believe this is also a chocolate chip. These sheepshead and lane snappers were hanging out underneath the hammerhead shark statues near the west end of the park. Here's a spotted porcupine fish. As we start to move under the west bridge, I find this giant Florida horse conch. It's huge. And as you might be able to notice, the water quality is starting to get a little lower. It's starting to get a little murkier and a little hazier. Now, it's kind of hard to see here, but that sponge-encrusted object that the other divers are trying to get a picture of here is actually a kind of decorator crab. As we start to head out, we find this polka dot batfish on the bottom. Just before we finish the dive, we come across this buffalo trunk fish, which is a relative of the scrawled cowfish I showed you earlier. Anyway, that's it for this dive. I hope you all enjoyed the video, and I'll see you all again soon.